It's like the worst mutant superpower ever. Push the record button and someone starts making a lot of fucking noise. Alright. What? You didn't think I was going to leave it this way, did you? That's resin. This, the barrel part, way too thin. I'm going to need some form of reinforcement, and I'm going to make the whole thing out of resin. I'm going to make a real quick mold though, because it's easier that way, right? I want to add, say, about an inch, so I can do half an inch on top, half an inch underneath. I'm going to put a mark. I'm going to cut it this way, and then I'm going to cut it in half longwise. See you in a second. I really should get a crosscut sled for this thing. It'd make my life so much easier. But I'm about to say I'm going to take the long one. So now I want to cut it in half lengthwise. I'm going to make a mark, full length, just so I got something to go from. And then I'm just going to cut it in half. I do want to get all of these extra shavings off. So this is the bottom, and I want to put a V on this side, and then two V's on this side. This is for registration, so when I put them back together in the mold, I'll know which way is which. Also, it lets me know which way is the bottom. A little pull behind the curtain. Today's November 1st. It's a nice day out. It's like 60 degrees. Everybody's blowing all their leaves everywhere. I have at least 6 neighbors who are just going to town. I have lots of projects out. That's all there is to that statement. There ain't nothing else. Turn the heat gun on. So I'm just going to put packing tape all the way across these holes, so when I cast them, they're there. It'll make lining everything up so much easier later on when I go to mold. I'm probably only ever going to make one of these, but you know, I have to prepare just in case, because that's what I do. I'm hoping that's not showing up in the audio. I have a feeling it probably is, but you know, I can hope. Packing tape on PVC should be more than good enough to make sure the resin doesn't leak out. If I have a little bit of PVC dust in the mold, it's not going to be the end of the world. I've got a cap. I have no idea what it's a cap to, but it's going to be my sprue. I want to make sure that there's enough room that I can see the basic shape and be able to remove it easily. I've already put the PVC on here, marked a circle. Now all I have to do is center it and get to getting. I can try and eyeball this as best I can. If it's a little off, then it's a little off, and I'll fix it in post. I've seen people use silicone for this, and those people are brilliant. I, on the other hand, am not. Last time I made a mold, I used foil tape, and that thing worked perfectly. Foil tape is amazing. Once I get most of it in and I line it up, it'll help register itself. Speaking of which, it's time to do some resin. Well, rubber. I almost exclusively use smooth-on products. For the mold, we're using Rebound 25. It's a great general purpose rubber. I feel it's relatively bulletproof. It's equal parts A and B over ice. I'm trying to rush. It's dinner time. I want to be done making my mold. I've waited for an hour for the leaf blower to not be leaf blowing. Now don't get me wrong here. I love my neighbors. My neighbors are awesome. And if they get their leaves to the curb soon enough, the big truck drives by and picks them all up. So I understand. I absolutely understand. That does not mean it's not super inconvenient for me. If this isn't enough Rebound, I do have another full unopened case, trial size. I would normally heat this before I do this because it makes everything move so much easier. There's a scene in the Final Fantasy remake where they're on an elevator. Bart's like, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. And Cloud's just sitting there with his arms crossed and his eyes. Cloud knows nothing he's going to do is going to make that any faster. And every time I get to the point where I'm like, I have to remind myself of that. Hey, things take as long as they take. And me getting frustrated is not going to help the situation at all. They both go in a jar, or in a container. They both go in a container to be mixed. I've left the heat gun on because if I do have a leak, I can probably be able to close it real quick as long as it doesn't get too bad, and I don't have to wait for the heat gun to warm up. For the record, the sizes are on the side. I could just pour it directly in the cup, but I like pouring in separate cups. Feels safer. This is a 20-minute pot life. That means in 20 minutes it's going to start setting up. And I have to be done doing whatever it is I'm doing at that point. It's got a 6-hour cure time. That's actually pretty good for silicones. I'm going to mix this up for a little while, and I'm going to bring you in so you can see what we're doing with the pour. I have a wedge, or a shim under this edge, just to make sure everything is perfectly centered. I don't degas my rubber. I probably should. I don't pressure pot my rubber. I probably should. But I feel if you do a thin enough stream, you don't really need it. Because there's not many bubbles that's going to be in that super thin of a stream. I wish I had gotten a slightly larger container for this. Matter of fact, we're going to do something slightly stupid. I'm going to uneven it so I can pour a little more down the side, and then we'll straighten it back out in a minute. This is one of those worst case scenario molds, by the way. There is nothing about this that is not just horrible. So many problems. It may not turn out. And if it does, or if it doesn't, it's not the mold's fault. It is completely my inability to get a good sized mold. Air has to have a way to get out or it won't. The only way I can really pull this off, by the way, is because it narrows and widens back up. If I'd done it with the blaster end up, the blaster end down the other way around, it'd be a super easy pour because this is the widest part of the prop. So it does look like I'm just pouring and pouring and pouring. It will fill in, but this is super uncomfortable to do because I'm leaning way over my table. So I'm going to shut you off. We'll be back as soon as something interesting happens. So this is the part where I always fail. I don't have enough rubber, but I just don't have enough rubber, right? And I'm going to sit here and argue with myself about opening up the other one up. And I'll be like, well, maybe if I use just silicone it'll work. No, we're not going to do that. This one's empty. This one's about to be empty. I'm just going to open up another container. It's usually what happens, right? Sticker shock. None of this stuff is cheap. And I'm only making one, maybe two or three. Yeah, not many. Don't have many Zam Wessels in my kerosene. I'm like, well, then I could offer them on the Bounty Hunters Guild. And no. I'll mix up the rest of this. Then I'm going to go get another container, and I'm going to open that up. I'm going to make more rubber. So it's full. Unfortunately, I need to pull some of that out because I need to be able to see where the edge is so I can line everything up properly. Once it's lined up, I'll be able to refill it. And that's probably good enough. So I just need to see where that is when it's centered. All right, let's see if we can pull just a little more out and get a better view. Like I said, I got 20 minutes, so I should be okay. And it isn't reacting at all like it's hardening, so I think I got time. Once I move this, it's more in the center, it's going to want to stay there. We may be a little off, but I think that's okay. I mixed up too much. It's usually what happens, right? But for the end, I'd rather have the end too much than not enough. So we leave this, and I will see you in about 6 hours. Well, it'll be closer to 12 because, you know, work and all that jazz. Had plenty of time to cure. Let's see what we got. There's a plane flying over. There is no chemical bond between the PVC and the rubber, but there is a great mechanical bond. A lot of friction, sticktivity. Same with the part. The silicone's not stuck to anything. That's not really how silicone works. Silicone only sticks to silicone. So now I have to split everything apart. That's a good sign. Silicone all the way through. A couple key things. I don't see my part anywhere, which is what we want, and it's solid all the way through. This bottom is wider than the top, so I'm going to have to cut it somewhere. Well, we're going to figure out where to cut first. What we're trying to do at this point is find out where the little cutout is, because that registers on top. And I want to cut this on the bottom. I should have marked it beforehand. I thought about marking it beforehand, and then completely forgot. Again, the only thing holding these two things together is sticktivity. Slight mechanical bond. So all you have to do is break that free, and you should be good to go. They make this silicone called Sorta Clear, another smooth-on product, and it is, as the name implies, sorta clear, which makes finding the edges way easier. With that, I'd be like, it looks like it's right about here. Again, had I marked it in the beginning when I thought about it, none of this would be a problem. Or I just said heck with it and cut it where I think it might be, and if I've got a parting line, it's just a little bit of sanding. I'm hoping to not have any parting lines visible. So we are loose all the way down to about where the barrel starts. I think we just chance it. I think it's right about here. It's only a slightly educated guess. Really cut dead into it. I cut dead into it. So no, definitely not where I thought it was. Couldn't get any more exactly where it was. If you make a lot of lightsabers, this is a process you're going to get familiar with. So I took my cut just to the edge there, as I should be able to pop the whole thing out. I'm not trying to force it. Let it come out nice and easy. Alright, now these registration marks. All I have to do is reline everything up. They should be ready to pour a mold, which is what we're about to do as soon as I tape this back closed. I'm probably going to pull 2 of these real quick. The first one is just to clean the mold, and the second one is to actually have. A lot of the stuff came off. It's probably from me messing with it. But we're going to pour a mold in a bit. I am in the middle of another project, hence the lack of, accoutrement. But that's the one I'm doing because I'm running out of daylight and it's got to happen first. Good news and bad news. Good news. I pulled a positive out of the mold. Looks perfect. Bad news, I didn't film it. That's alright. But this is just to clean the mold. So you look all the silver that was in there. That was primarily from the chopstick. This down here, it was almost perfect. I have a bunch of stuff out right now because if I'm pouring resin, I like having spare molds in case something goes wrong or in case I have too much. I don't like wasting resin. And this one's going to be interesting because we are pouring, so we're going to pour about this much because I'm going to put an aluminum rod inside just to strengthen this area up the barrel a little bit, the thin part. I hate for it to drop and shatter. And even just a little bit of support, it's going to go a long way to making it way stronger. But because of that, I need to pour a little bit. I don't like mixing a little bit because the ratios get kind of weird. A couple drops when you're only using a tiny amount is a huge amount suddenly. So I'm probably going to make a couple compads, a bunch of Tuscan bits. I need eye stalks. I have everything else. I have a garrison mate who wants to make a couple of Tuscans, so might as well make out the perks for him. But we're going to mix up some resin. We're going to do some fun stuff. Equal parts A and B. Probably going to, because I want to do a compad. I got pilots, right? So let's go, this is about 6 ounces. I think we're going to do 4. All these crystallized stuffs, that's what causes your resin to foam, by the way. So whenever possible, I'm going to clean as much of that off as possible. I have been all over the map the last couple of days, just running back and forth with just about everything I'm doing. And that always leads to problems. When you mix the resin, always pour the thinner liquid in first. That way the stuff on top is forced to sink in, as opposed to having it on the bottom where it's just going to congeal. I use Smoothcast 300 almost exclusively. It is bulletproof. I absolutely love this stuff. I rarely have problems with it. Of course, now that I've said that, it's got a 2 or 3 minute pot life. And it's done in about 20. So don't mix if you're not ready to pour. Like I said, I'm only mixing a little bit of that, so I want to... So now I'm weird when I come to compads. I'm going to let that do its whole thing till it's almost done and it's still pretty flexible. Then I'm going to wrap it around this. Tape it in place and let it cure the rest of the way. Because I like my compads, a little bit of a curve to them. So now we wait. This is my favorite part, right? I'm going to bring you in for this. I love watching the just spread of white go across this. The 2 polymers bonding together. Because they're all starting to do it. It's kind of neat. The warmer it is, the faster this happens. Also, if you have thick molds, it goes way faster than thin ones. This has thin all around the edges, so this is going to take a little bit. If you look at this eyes, the eye here is already kicked pretty well. This one's starting, but the little horns, since they're tiny, take a lot longer. I could make a 3D printed thing that does, this is just a salt shaker. It's been wrapped in packing tape. It doesn't stick very well to packing tape, which is what we want. I know, Or getting excited about a completely non-real. I think it's there enough. Bit of waste of tape. I could use rubber bands, and I've tried rubber bands. They don't work very well for me. Completely technique. But hey. Now we let that do its thing. But while it is doing its thing, let's get back to what we were doing. This time we're doing 4. I should open this up, make sure I'm in the center. Since it's just support, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But we're doing 2 and 2. So it gets super cloudy while you start to mix, and then it instantly clears back up. That's usually my indication that we're ready to go. I'm trying not to pour on the rod. Unfortunately, there's no easy way to hold everything in place, so I feel like the kid with his finger in a dam. Fortunately, unfortunately, that's all I got. Because the more it sets up, the more viscous it becomes, and then, you know, sooner or later it just stops moving. Neat. Okay, look in there, see if we can get it to focus. Come on. It's just holding itself in there. Just what we wanted. While we wait, let's see what our compad did. Huge waste of tape. But, you know, I do all kinds of planning. I wanted it round. If it's a forearm, pretty okay. Getting the first bit to pull out is the hardest part. So I have a bubble in my mold. That's what that is. That'll pop right off. It's not too shabby. If I wait for it to fully dry and harden, this would be horrible to take off. Pretty easy now. Decent compad. I could, when I make another mold, just put a drop of resin or a rubber in there, and that would fix it. Alright, and for the very last time, I'm going to fill this up the rest of the way since that rod isn't moving anymore. And we're going to do 4 ounces again, so I can make another compad. I should have gloves on. It would make me feel a little better about using it. Alright, now we let it do its thing. Let's demold. Let's start with this one, just because. Neat. Alright. Now for the one everybody came to watch. Let's see how we did. Definitely comes out easier the second time. That looks pretty okay. Don't see anything out of the ordinary. Don't see the rod anywhere, which means it's pre-centered. For the next day or so, this mold, or this resin here, it's going to be a little on the soft side. So I'm going to leave it. Make sure it's flat, because I don't want it to bow up at all. Of course, putting that rod in there is definitely going to help. As far as this flashing goes, a little bit of light scraping right now is going to go a long way. Alright, the next step is to sand the end, prime, paint everything. I've already seen that, so we'll pick it up when we're done. Here it is. Not too shabby. I know, it looks a lot like the last one, except this one's 1,000 times more durable. The resin is beautiful, it's fantastic. It's fantastic, but it's fragile. I drop it, it shatters. This one probably would have worked, but again, it's got that same problem. I think if I had enough pressure here, it's going to snap off. Probably not, but still, I wanted to reinforce it just to make sure that everything was 100%, right? So that's it. Completed. Resin. This is resin. This is 3D printed resin. The handle is much more durable. The trigger might snap off, and if it does, let's replace it. That's not that big of a deal. But all in all, I'm very happy with how it looks. One more step that I could have stopped before. Had I FDM printed it with filament, it would have been fine too. I don't like 3D printed props on my costumes. It's just a personal taste kind of thing. I overdid it. The mold turned out fantastic. I'll probably, never need it again. But if I do, I have it. I'm going to fill it before I'm done, though, because I prefer to leave my molds populated. Then I'm going to write, what it is on the side. All in all, finished the prop completely, and I'm very happy with it. Someday, I may make a metal one. Probably not, because it's not my costume. I'm not super into it. Just making it for a friend. But this is your thing. Thanks for making it to the end. Subscribe wherever it happens to be. Like, leave a comment. Yeah, I'll see you next week. Editing Hawk does a really good job, and y'all don't see most of this.